Hi everyone, it's Leela from Miss Kiss Creations. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am wanting to show you how to make this tiger print tumbler. All of my materials will be listed in my description below, along with links, glitter companies, and I also do have a glitter coupon code in my description below to receive 15% off your order. There will also be a list of help videos added in my description. Since this tumbler does have a lot of steps, I'm just gonna go ahead and get started. I am using a 20 ounce from Walmart. This is an Ozark Trail tumbler. I'm going to take my 180 grit sand block or sanding block. I did purchase this from Walmart. Again, it is 180 grit. I did wet this just a little bit. I just ran it over the sink, and then I'm just going to sand my tumbler. So you're just gonna sand all around your tumbler. Don't worry about any scratches you might have on your tumbler. You're going to be covering this up anyway, so just make sure your tumbler is completely sanded from top to bottom, and make sure you do get the bottom and around the rims. So I'm gonna go ahead and do this off camera, and I will be right back. Now that I have my tumbler sanded, I'm now going to take 91% alcohol and spray around my tumbler, and then wipe the tumbler down with the 91% alcohol. You want to make sure that you are wiping down your tumbler completely. You want top to bottom, so you want to make sure you are getting the top of your tumbler. A lot of times the epoxy will repel around the rim of the tumbler up here, so you want to make sure you are wiping down very well. So I'd rather wipe down too much than too little. So go ahead and drench your tumbler with the 91% alcohol, and then wipe down very, very well. I am using a clean paper towel to wipe down my tumbler. I do cut my paper towels in thirds just to save on materials. So for this next step, you're going to spray paint your entire tumbler orange. I do have 3 types of oranges on hand. I have this rustic orange, the real orange, and then I have this neon orange. You can choose any type of orange you like. It is a tiger, so as you know, all tigers aren't the same color. So choose whichever orange you like, even if it's not one of these 3. If you have an orange on hand, go ahead and choose that orange, that's fine. So I'm just going to use whichever one I have least of, which is this color orange. So I'm using Rust-Oleum Rustic Orange, and the finish doesn't have to be a specific finish for this. So I have my matte, and then I have my gloss finish. I'm just using my matte just because I have less on hand, just to get rid of this can. So I'm now going to spray paint my tumbler. Whenever you're spray painting this tumbler, you have to be very careful with the paint running down, because this is going to show through the epoxy. So whenever you spray paint your tumbler, make sure you're spraying very small spritz. You don't want to heavily coat your tumbler. That's going to create a heavier coat of spray paint, and then it's going to want to drip or run down the tumbler. You want to make sure, if you are outside, make sure you take this back inside to dry. Don't leave this outside to dry, because especially if you have a lot of trees around, leaves might get on it. There might be bugs that get on it, and once it gets onto the tumbler, onto the wet spray paint, the bugs are going to stick on that, or the leaves are, or the dirt, and then it's going to be a hard time having to sand it back down and then spray paint over the tumbler again to get an even coat. So I'm gonna run back inside, and then we'll finish the video. All right, y'all, so while that tumbler is drying, you're going to want to find a tiger print on the internet. So we're going to go to Google, and all I did was I typed in tiger print SVG. I went to the images, and it comes up with a lot of animal print or tiger print images. So I just found one here, and then I went ahead and I saved this to my desktop. So once I save this, I'm going to go back to the Cricut design space, and then I'm wanting to upload that image. I'm going to go to browse, and then I'm going to find the image. I saved it under tiger print. I'm going to open that image. Once I open it, it's going to give me an option of simple, moderate, or complex. Especially since it's 2 colors, I always choose the complex one. And then continue. Now from here, what you're wanting to do is you're wanting to clean up the image or erase the spots where you want the machine to cut. So if you have this image right here and you don't clean up the white or the black areas, whenever the machine, the Cricut design or the Cricut or the Silhouette, whatever cutting machine you may have, it's going to cut this like a piece of paper. You want to cut the design. You want the machine to cut the design. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose my select and erase tool, which I already have up. I'm going to zoom in some more, and then I'm going to disregard either the white or the black. You can choose either or, just make sure whichever one you choose is the only one you eliminate. So I just eliminated the white. So I'm going to keep the black print up there. So I'm just going to click everywhere I see white. That way, whenever the Cricut cuts, it's going to cut all around the black. So when I weed this design, I can peel up either the black or the white area, or where the white was. So now the design, or now the Cricut machine, it's not going to just cut a piece of paper or a rectangle. It's going to cut within the design. When you are finished, you're going to continue, and then you're going to save it. Once it's saved, I'm going to click it, then upload it into my design space. Once it's uploaded to my design space, I'm now wanting to size it to the correct size of my tumbler. So now we're going to measure the tumbler. Now I'm going to measure my tumbler from top to bottom. So I'm rounding up to about 7 inches from the top to the bottom, and then I'm going to take the widest part of my tumbler, which for these Ozark Trails, it's the top part, and then I'm going to measure the diameter, and it measures right at 11 inches. So my cup measured top to bottom 7 inches, and then the diameter measured right at 11 inches. So I went ahead and I did 11.5, and then I adjusted it to 7.6. I want more material than less. I just like to have more to play with just in case I make a mistake or something. So I have my vinyl on my mat and it's ready to cut. The vinyl that I'm using is 631 or non-permanent temporary vinyl. You do not want to use your 651 or permanent vinyl on this tumbler. The reason is because this is going to be a template. You're going to be removing this vinyl from your tumbler. If you remove this vinyl from your tumbler, it's going to peel up this paint. So we want the temporary vinyl. We don't want the hard adhesive to peel up the paint whenever you're done laying your template down. My Cricut has cut my design. My tiger prints are all cut out. So normally what I would do is take this my left corner, and peel up the excess, leaving the prints down. But since this is going to be a template, I am wanting to rip up or peel up the pieces where the stripes are going to be, because this is where I'm going to be laying my Mod Podge and glitter down, because I want this to be glittered, and then I want the gray part to be the cup to show through. So I hope that makes sense. So I'm peeling up what I would normally leave down. I'm not going to get rid of these. I'm thinking about doing another project with this, so I'm just going to stick them to my desk and keep all of the tiger stripes. I have my design weeded, and now I'm going to peel this up and place this on the tumbler. I'm now going to remove the design from the adhesive, and it's going to stick to the transfer tape. Now I'm just going to lay the design on my tumbler. Again, these are tiger stripes. Tigers aren't perfect, the designs aren't perfect, so if it lays a little off-centered or it's not quote unquote straight, you're not going to be able to tell that it's not straight. So go ahead and lay it. Your biggest concern is you don't want to have your you want to lay your transfer, or I'm sorry, you want to lay your vinyl flat. So because we are going to be placing glitter on here. If it's not flat, I'm going to show you how we can fix this here in a second, but you want to try your hardest to lay it as flat as you can, just to make your process just a little easier. Like I said, if you lay it and it's not straight, no big deal. I'm going to show you how to clean up these areas. Now I'm going to be removing the transfer tape and leaving the vinyl on the tumbler. I have a lot of areas around my tumbler that didn't lay flat. Again, that's okay. I'm just going to peel it up and just lay it flat by hand. Again, you want all of your design to be flat because you don't want any Mod Podge or glitter getting underneath your tumbler or underneath your vinyl. So again, I'm just peeling this up, and then I'm just relaying this piece and just laying it flat on my tumbler. And I'm going to repeat this with all of the areas that might have creases in them, and there might be a possibility that glitter may get underneath there. As for this part of the tumbler, I'm just going to cut off the piece that has the rectangle part. I don't want that. There's no rectangle spots. I mean, there shouldn't be any rectangle spots on tigers. So this design is just gonna make the flow look uneven. So I'm just going to cut that off. If you're unhappy the way that your print laid, you can always, like, there's pieces that aren't attached to this. So these are all individual pieces. So you can just relay it and lay however way you want it to lay, or you can take the pieces that you've weeded and add those pieces to your design, especially on the back of this tumbler. If you don't want this here, you can take up some pieces. This is a piece that I weeded in the early part of the video. If I don't want this hard line right here, I can always take this up. I'm gonna keep this part just in case I need it for later. And then I have my piece here, one of my stripes that I pulled up. And then I'm just going to lay it so it can go with the tumbler. And that way it doesn't look like the back of the tumbler or the seam. So it's overlapping this piece, so I can kind of rearrange the stripes. That's one of the good things about having the stripes. You can kind of rearrange it, and there's really no rhyme or reason to it. They're just tiger stripes. So now this doesn't look as much like the back of the tumbler. So I'm going to replace some of these. Instead of picking up the vinyl and putting it down, you can always just go ahead and take your scissors and just round it off yourself to make it not look like such a straight line there. So you can just round it off and it looks more natural and not so much the back of the tumbler. I have all of my vinyl laid around my tumbler. I cut the bottom off here and I tucked in some pieces inside of the tumbler just to make it easier whenever I go to peel the tumbler up, the vinyl up. Now I'm going around the tumbler and I'm making sure all of the vinyl is stuck onto the tumbler. You don't want any pieces sticking up. If you have pieces sticking up, remember the Mod Podge and the glitter, they're going to travel underneath the vinyl, and it's not going to have crisp lines or as crisp lines as what you're wanting. I'm going to go around the tumbler and add folded up pieces of blue tape. This is for whenever I go to peel up this gray vinyl, so it's easier for me to locate where the vinyl is. If you don't have blue painter's tape, you can always use Scotch tape. You can even use your transfer tape. So the excess transfer tape that you used, you can even use that. So whichever works for you, as long as you kind of leave it sticking up like so and it doesn't get in the way of whenever you drop your glitter. I will be applying my glitter using the Mod Podge method. This is the Mod Podge that I have on hand. As long as your Mod Podge dries clear, that's all that matters. And now I'm just going to apply my Mod Podge to my tumbler, and I'm just starting from the bottom and going to the top. You can do brush strokes up and down like so, or you can go between the design and try to only Mod Podge the tumbler and kind of avoid the vinyl itself. Whichever way you feel comfortable, there's no right or wrong way. So once I'm about a third up the tumbler, I'm now going to apply my glitter. I'm going to take my catch paper, open my glitter, and just pour my glitter right over the Mod Podge. Everywhere I put the Mod Podge down, I just want the glitter to have an even coverage, excuse me. I'm going to tap off my tumbler arm, and it's going to look like this. So now I'm going to repeat this process from the bottom all the way to the top of the tumbler until it's completely covered. So now your tumbler is going to look like this. It's not going to look even at all. It's not going to look pleasant. It's just going to look just glittered black. So what you're going to want to do now is you're going to want to add another coat of glitter. You have two options. You can either let this dry for about 45 minutes to an hour, meaning let the Mod Podge dry. If I go and Mod Podge this again, it's going to scrape up the glitter and scrape up that wet Mod Podge. You don't want that. You want the Mod Podge to be completely dry and not wet at all. Or you can do, if you do have this on hand, you can do what I have. I have spray adhesive. The spray adhesive that I have today is the Elmer's Craft Bond. I do like the spray adhesive a lot, so this allows me to go right into the second coat. I just have to go outside, spray the entire tumbler, come back inside, and then glitter the tumbler. Either way is fine. I'm just going to use my spray adhesive, and I will be right back. When spraying your tumbler with the spray adhesive, you are going to notice your tumbler or the glitter dull. That's okay. The shine is going to come right back whenever we lay this second coat. And you want to make sure you do this rather quickly because the spray adhesive does dry really quickly because it's a very thin coat of glue being sprayed on your tumbler. I did purchase my spray adhesive from Amazon. I've also purchased it from Target and Walmart. And I personally like the Crafter's Bond, but I know there's other spray adhesives out there that work perfectly fine. So now I'm just focusing on getting a full coverage on the tumbler, making sure there's all the spots that are covered. And as you can see, the stripes are completely gone. You can't see anywhere of where they once were. So having that tape method or the transfer tape method really does help locate where the stripes are, especially since this design isn't exact, it's kind of random. I put my excess glitter back into its container, and now I'm just going to tap off any excess glitter that may be on the tumbler. So for my next step, I'm now going to let these 2 layers of adhesive dry. Depending on the amount of Mod Podge and adhesive spray you added on your tumbler, give it about 45 minutes to an hour and a half to dry, and then we'll go ahead and we'll move on to the next step. And I am back with my tumbler. It has been sitting for about an hour and a half, just drying. So now we're going to take off the vinyl. So I do have some pieces up here that I left a little further up on the tumbler just to make it easier for me to take the vinyl off. So you're just going to grab anywhere that you see the vinyl sticking up and just peel slowly, and just do this around the entire tumbler. So you're just peeling up the vinyl. Make sure you're going slow with this because you can really rip the design or rip the design incorrectly. So just take your time peeling this vinyl up until all the vinyl is gone, and we'll move on to the next step. I have peeled up all of my vinyl from my tumbler. Guys, this tumbler is so adorable. I love how it's turning out already. It looks like I did get some adhesive right here on the tumbler, so I'm going to just take 91% alcohol. I'm going to spray it on a piece of paper towel, and I'm just going to remove that from the tumbler. So I don't want that showing whenever I epoxy. So if you have any areas where you might have gotten adhesive, or maybe there's dried up Mod Podge, just go ahead and just remove that with 91% alcohol. You can also use a Q-tip in smaller areas. And for my next step, I am wanting to get rid of this excess glitter that's on the orange part. So I'm just taking a 1/2 inch, it's a looser brush, and I'm just going to wipe around the tumbler, just getting rid of some of the excess glitter. So when I go to epoxy, it's gonna have a little bit more crisp lines than random glitter around the orange parts. I just wanted to let y'all know that there are some lines on my tumbler that aren't as crisp, or I ripped up the vinyl too quickly and it ripped up the glitter with it. So like this part right here, you could see the line isn't crisp, but honestly, I think it just goes with the print even more. So if you do have that happen, don't worry about it. I did that around the tumbler a lot here. But again, it is a tiger print, and I just think it goes well with the overall look. So if you look at the tumbler, you would never know that I ripped up the vinyl too quickly. The only reason why I know is because I know I did it. I'm now going to epoxy my tumbler. I do have my face mask on, so that's why I'm yelling at you. I am not yelling at you in a rude manner. Did mix my epoxy off camera. I will be posting a help video on how to mix epoxy correctly. I mixed a total of 30 milliliters of epoxy, 15 milliliters of part A, and 15 milliliters of part B.
Okay, y'all, so I made a mistake and I was so excited to epoxy this tumbler. I completely forgot a step before I went to epoxy in. After you take off your vinyl, after you clean up your tumbler, you take your paintbrush and you wipe down all the glitter, get the excess glitter off. You need to go in and spray your tumbler with a sealer. So the sealer that I use is the Crystal Clear Krylon. It's acrylic coating. This is the only sealer that I use. Make sure you do this before you epoxy. So after you spray your tumbler with your sealer, let that sit for 30 to 45 minutes. And I spray 3 generous coats. I spray very thick coats of the sealer. After you spray the 3 coats back to back, I spray it, spin it, spray it, spin it, spray it outside. Once I spray the 3 coats, I let the tumbler sit and dry for 30 to 45 minutes. After I spray the coats, that's when I move into epoxy. But like I said, I was so excited to epoxy this tumbler. I wanted to see how it looked epoxied. So I completely forgot a step and I went right to epoxying. So I do apologize, but it's part of making tumblers. It's trial and error. I still want y'all to see this process. Just please make sure you seal your glitter in before you epoxy, or you're gonna have to do what I had to do. What I basically did was I went to epoxy my tumbler. I realized, oh, I forgot to seal my tumbler, or I forgot to seal my glitter. So all I did was I took about 5 to 10 minutes. I took my gloved finger and I went around the tumbler with my gloved finger and I went through the orange spaces, taking off any glitter that might have been on the tumbler. I even took off most of the epoxy on the orange spaces. So if you don't have any Krylon or any acrylic sealer, then you can go ahead and do the way that I did, and that's kind of a hack. But if you do, don't waste your time with that. Just go ahead and seal it and make it a lot easier for you. So now my epoxy is uneven. I have more epoxy on my black area, which is my glittered area, and not on my orange area. That is still okay. I'm gonna let this tumbler spin for 4 hours. Once it is finished spinning for 4 hours, the epoxy should be cured enough for me to put another layer of epoxy on. When I add my next layer of epoxy, that's gonna flatten out the tumbler perfectly fine. It's not gonna be bumpy or anything. I do apologize for this small hiccup, but I'm still wanting to show you this tutorial and I'm still planning on publishing this video. This just shows you that no matter how long or how well you do something, you will still make a mistake. And that is entirely okay. Do not give up and just push through it. Compromise, and you'll still end up with a beautiful tumbler. So with you doing this tumbler correctly, meaning spraying your tumbler with your Krylon Crystal Clear sealer, then you epoxy it. The next step will be letting your tumbler spin on the turner for 4 to 6 hours. Once it is done spinning for 4 to 6 hours, go ahead and turn off your turner. Then let your tumbler air dry or air cure for another 4 to 6 hours. A total drying time of 10 to 12 hours. After 10 to 12 hours, you can go ahead and put a decal on here. Then right after you decal, go ahead and epoxy it and repeat the drying, curing process again. If you don't want to put a decal on there, once your tumbler has been dried or cured for 10 to 12 hours, it is no longer sticky. Your tumbler is good to go. I'm going to leave this tumbler the way it is. I'm not going to put a decal on here. But if I was going to put a decal on here, the only appropriate decal that I can see that fits this tumbler is clearly Joe Exotic's face.